Well, there we get in the weird zone with
There we do.
gorillas.
There we do,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens. But for the cancer patient, you always refer out, you always do that.
Or,
That's a
now, can I
requirement.
ask this, because I have had clients come in who already are under the care of a physician.
That's okay, it's
And
a notice issue.
It's a notice issue,
Then
okay.
link
and
up with their oncologist, do that, link up
So just get the,
with their provider, and then say, this is what
get the
I'm
proper
doing.
permissions to
Proper-
have that
proper-
conversation.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Do that, get your forms lined up so you can have that, and say, this is a requirement I have. And of course, you always ask, are you seeing a physician for something, you know, that kind of thing. And then
But they
connect
always
it.
have that in the intake.
Exactly.
Who's their physician, no.
And then get permission. Harrison?
There is no physician, MD, that will treat a person for cancer if they're taking herbs or vitamins or anything.
And that's why you have to do
They will say, I
this.
can't treat you anymore
Right.
because you're
And that's
doing
what, you
something
give
I
that
can't
person
control."
knowledge.
So where do you leave that? You leave that person hang on
You leave that
tenterhooks.
person to make the decision for himself or herself. You're
That's right.
talking about freedom of health, and you need to, you, in your role, have to say to this person, look, you have cancer. I have to refer you to an oncologist. You don't have to go, but I have to refer you, and you have to document that you've done that referral.
And I'll tell you, that's a very, very dangerous area. I would strongly, that's why we have people going to Mexico, right? Where they can get holistic approaches, because they go to Mexico to these special treatment centers outside the US jurisdiction, because the cancer physicians have a whole different approach. Your approach may actually do better. I have a very, very dear friend who had breast cancer. She chose a naturopathic cure, and it worked. But she had to go outside the country.
I'm just following up
Yeah.
with the statement that insurance is cut right there at that point. The doctor says you're getting alternative therapy.
Right,
His insurance quits, he won't work on you.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's
So
that patient's choice.
That's why I question
Well,
you.
let me ask you this question a little bit further. Do you dare go on?
Yeah, then at that point, what do?
Well,
Your goal
What
is
if
to
that
do what's in
person-
the best interest of the
You have to go to Bob
patient.
and get it released.
No, but the problem is this. If you go on, and we have this, and we've seen this as tragic, you do your best for someone, and if they die, and they have declined AMA type of care, do you even go on with that person? That's a judgment call you're gonna have to make.
You know I mean, the statistics are very common. 97% of anybody doing chemo dies. So you
But I
have
hate
to,
to
you
be
talk to us
quoting-
about being empathetic
But
and cutting
yes.
edge, and
Okay.
yet we can't treat people because.
No, we didn't say you couldn't treat. We said you have to provide them with a referral, you document the referral, and then that way, because you have to do what's in the best interest of your client/patient, correct? So what is in the best interest? How many people have had a diagnosis from somebody and they've gone, I don't believe this, and you go to get a second opinion, right? Or they've tried every form of traditional Western medicine and it doesn't work. It's up to that individual to make that choice, but they have to make an informed choice. So, you know, if you've got an issue that is cancer, and maybe it is something that could benefit from, you know, chemo or radiation, I'm not saying it is or not, but they want to go this direction, if they go in with their eyes open and they have the knowledge, that's their choice.
But you better have
And
it
it's defensible.
documented.
It's defensible if you have it documented, but again, the reason we're having this conversation is because this is in Colorado state statute.
Correct, this is Colorado only.
It's specifically mentions.
It's actually really different in the Health Freedom Act than in the Naturopathic
It
Act.
still mentions cancer.
Right, so in the Health Freedom Act, it says I cannot directly administer medical protocols to a client who has cancer.
Correct.
So it says I cannot directly administer medical protocols. I have no idea what that means, and I was hoping we could
You
shed some
can't
light
do
on that.
chemo, you can't do radiation, you can't do,
We can't do those
Can
things
I tell them
anyways.
they can have some ginger for nausea?
yeah, that's not a,
They administer it themselves.
yeah.
See,
Again,
this is
As long
the
as you're clear
problem
that
in
it's
the
not a
statute.
Okay.
protocol.
We saw these conflicts in the statute.
Okay.
this is
Move
why
on
we're
then.
telling you this is so
These
confusing.
Well, that's what I'm-
These
Yeah.
conflicts have to be cleared up either through the Technical Amendments Act, which goes through every year and misses some of this stuff, or it has to be cleared up through the litigation.
Okay.
There has not been much litigation on this. I want to hit a couple of areas real quick. Will they help you? one of the things you have to do is you have to notify it says here the director, but it's really talking about other, you have a duty to report for the person who is a danger to themselves, a suicidal person, whatever, whatnot. But you have to notify when there's a physical or mental illness or condition that affects the naturopathic doctor's abilities. That's your own condition in that context. If you find yourself having a condition that affects your ability to practice, you've got to notify the director in Colorado of that. So if that steps in. But then it says, it goes on to say, if you, upon such notification, and this is a bit of a side tangent, but I wanted to hit it briefly, you have to act within the limitations then that the board gives you and the DORA gives you. And if you fail to act within those limitations, if it says you can only practice so many hours per day or so many days per week, you've got to stay with that. I would say that if there is a situation that presents itself, if there's a client or patient who presents themselves as being a danger to themselves or others, you have a duty to report that. That's something that you have to do. Now, child abuse is the other area, is the other huge area that we're not going to have time to get into today. But there's a specific child abuse statute. I testified for the 1993 Act. It was then modified in 2000. It was modified again following that in 2010. These statutes really change frequently. The Child Abuse Reporting Act really comes in. If you have a child and the parent brings the child there with potential signs of abuse, you're required to report. We'll save that for another day. But that's something just to be aware of on that. Well, what I think we need to do is to try to come up with some guidelines, some practical, boy, this is such a big area that I wish we could give you things that were well spelled out and well thought out. We're in an area that is brand new. But the good news is we have some regs, unlike when I had some cases that I had out of the thyroid cases in the 80s and early 90s, where we had no guidelines. We had common law for that.
Susan,
Go ahead.
So this may be something we need to discuss further outside the context of this, because it might be longer, but I'm still continuing to struggle because all of these references are to the naturopathic statute. And so the naturopathic statute says if I want to practice as a naturopathic doctor, I must register. I cannot register unless I've gone to an approved naturopathic school and taken the National Naturopathic exam. Well, I have not gone to one of those schools and I'm not going to.
that's your choice.
And I won't, whatever, take the exam. So everything I do has to fall under the Health Freedom Act. I mean, on the one hand, I hear you telling me I need to comply with the naturopathic doctor statute, except that I can't because I'm not one of them. Is it maybe to the extent that I can see that those things might apply to what I do, it's safer
yes.
me to try to do that? But I'm really concerned to hear you giving, I know we're not your clients and you're not giving formal legal advice, but to hear you saying that we are obligated to follow the naturopathic statute, because I would hope that if I ever, God forbid, if I ever end up in front of DORA, that you'd actually be able to stand up there and say, she wasn't required to follow the naturopathic statute, she's not a naturopathic doctor, the Health Freedom Act is what applies to her, and she followed it.
We would say that, but what you need to understand is DORA does what DORA wants. And if DORA decides that you actually, whatever you did fell under the Naturopathic Act, we would fight that tooth and nail. We would have a whole thing on how you didn't do this and how you followed this, and we're really good at what we do. But on occasion, and especially with something this new,
It may fall under here and it may fall under here.
Correct.
So we have to at least be aware.
We have to be aware, and I mean, to the extent it sets a standard of practice that makes sense for what we're doing as well, but I can't register.
No, and we're not asking you to
So it can't
register.
apply.
We're asking, it can still apply. You can still follow the rules to the extent that it applies
As
to
a
you.
best practice.
That's your best practice, is to take your statutory, to do what you do, I guess what we're trying to say is, don't assume that simply because what you do doesn't fall under DORA, it doesn't mean that you cannot be grieved to DORA and that you can still not be sanctioned with a cease and desist. They can come in and say, we get what you're saying, but we think that what you did fell under this act and you need to stop what you're doing right now.
So, to get to something more specific, the Health Freedom Act and the Naturopathic Act have different language with regard to children under 2. Under the Health Freedom Act, I cannot, quote, treat a child under 2. And under the Naturopathic Act, a naturopathic doctor can treat a child under 2 if they do certain things.
Right.
So, as far as I can tell, as long as I am not a naturopathic doctor registered, if there's a distinction, I better follow the stricter,
Correct.
if the Health Freedom Act is stricter, I better follow the Health Freedom Act.
That's
I would-
exactly
Okay.
correct.
Now, what I was also hoping for some clarification, if you guys have any thoughts under the Health Freedom Act as to what it means to treat a child under 2. So like the cancer, it says, no, you can't directly administer a medical protocol. Fine, I can't give them chemo, no problem. So now the Health Freedom Practice Act applies to all aspects of Ayurveda as well as Reiki or anything else. Does that mean I can't do anything at all with a kid under 2? Can I do, Reiki without even touching the kid under 2? What can I do with a kid under 2? What does treat mean?
There's a bigger problem.
Both parents have signed.
Well, that's great. And I'm happy that they did.
Yeah.
There's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is this. Are you going to get hit with a charge that you are practicing unlicensed medicine?
It depends what treat means.
Okay, you sound
Now
like Bill
you
Clinton right
define-
now. The definition of is,
Now you
but
define treat.
how do you define treat within
You
your?
can't define, the issue is,
It's not how I define it, how.
I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you see the difficulties that now we're approaching.
Which is why I think it's underscoring the need, as an organization, we need to get down and dirty and start to define these standards of care.
You really do.
Right? Isn't that
because-
what it is?
Yes,
Absolutely.
because your best defense is
And I
going to
think
be.
the COLORAMA can define that.
Yeah.
And set a whole protocol about the scope of Ayurvedic practice in the state of Colorado.
I would take that a step further. Once you've gotten that defined, I would contact your legislators and I would find somebody to sponsor a bill to get this defined for you, so that you know what you're doing, so that if you're an Ayurvedic practitioner and not an ND, then it specifically says in the statute that it talks about Ayurvedic practitioners in a different way.
So just so that you all are aware, and I'd have to look and see if I have notes of the name, when the Health Freedom Act was in front of the legislature and there was all the testimony and there was all this lobbying and I was in that awful basement cafeteria, you know.
Right.
I've been there.
And what we were told by the lobbyists who had been hired for the Health Freedom Act side of it is that there was at least one, there was a senator, but there was also a number of people who were really active from the medical association side, the doctor side, who were dead set against Ayurveda.
Yes.
Because we wanted to put the words Ayurveda, like when the Health Freedom Act says, these are things that fall within Health Freedom Act, we wanted to say Ayurveda. And they said, the minute you say Ayurveda, this act will not be passed, period. It's
Right.
broad enough now to cover you, but we have doctors here who will veto it.
Now you
So-
know.
Because of the history.
Because,
We know why.
Yeah.
Right? It's the history of the basma use and the contamination
okay,
of our.
well, and that comes, so then that becomes a whole other legislative lobby and whatever issue for when is it time to go back to them.
Mhm.
Because you don't want it to get to the point where you propose a statute and they say, we're not gonna pass this, and we're gonna amend the Health Freedom Act to exclude
you.
Ayurveda.
Yeah, so I think, again, if we have a conversation about standards of care, but it's,
No bottom.
in Colorama, it is
Yeah.
only plant-based Ayurvedic remedies,
Sure.
then we've.
Yeah, I think
And so that's a conversation for another, yeah.
it's 11:30.
Okay.
And with this, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob and Michelle, this was wonderful, and we would like to go, further with this.
Yeah.
And, however it is, we can talk about how we need to,
Sure.
I think as a board, we
Oh,
need to
wait.
come back together and then we have
As a
to
board?
following
We'll
up.
be happy to do that.
Yeah.
We enjoy this gets us out of the office even on a Saturday morning, so we enjoy
This
this.
got me out of bed on a Saturday morning. That was kind of exciting.
It's
I see
a lot
this
of
yellow
fun.
thing in the sky, I'm like, what is that? Something exploded. It
One
scares me.
final comment to your comment just a moment ago is, I have heard legislators say, when I've been there advocating certain things on behalf of groups, I've heard legislators say, we're not sure how this fits, we're gonna let the courts decide.
And then you're telling me it's never gonna get,
Well-
even if the ALJ decides, it's only gonna be some
Well,
court
this would
and
go
not
beyond
court.
administrative, this would go
This would go
traditional
beyond that.
courts.
It's-
Yeah.
This is a question I had. You're saying you never want to see us be the test cases, but is there any
Exactly.
other way to establish?
Yes, through continued lobbying, continued national efforts, continued local efforts, you're up against a lot,
Right.
as you felt when you were there.
Yeah, well, the 2-year-old thing got stuck in at
Sure.
the end, and the senator, I don't remember her name, who sponsored the bill, and she came and spoke to COLORAMA afterwards, said that they had to put it in because the pediatricians were going to
Yep.
kill the entire bill
Yes.
without it there.
And they will.
Now, it would be nice if they put in some language was, not administer direct protocols or whatever,
Right.
just treat.
But I think treat is one of those things. Again, is it outside of your scope? You know, what is, and that's the problem. This is why when we're giving you ND language because it is clearer.
Yeah.
And it is a higher level of scrutiny, but you gotta be careful.
Where
We've
does
lacked-
Chinese medicine fall in?
Oh dear
Oh,
Lord.
They're licensed and they're very established and there's a lot of language. And I'll
But
Let's-
isn't that
their
where
site.
Ayurveda needs to go?
Let's have that
Because
conversation.
I think that's up to you guys.
That will be
We're
this
gonna get
afternoon's conversation.
Yeah. That'll be after the attorney's leave.
Yeah.
That'll be, yes. That'll be- Thank you so much for
Thank you for
having
having
us.
For anybody who's interested, we do have the business cards for Robert and Michelle.
If you need more, I have a few more.
Actually, yeah, if I could get a few more of Robert's.
Yep.